All right, so here are your favorites to claim Power 5 conferences as far as odds are concerned from the ACC. So Clemson right there at the top at a minus 140. Big Ten, Oklahoma, or Big 12, I should say, Oklahoma at a plus 190. Big Ten has Ohio State, prohibitive favorites there. USC and Utah claim the top odds for the Pac-12, and the SEC at a minus 145. Seems like a bargain. That's Alabama. All right, so this is our future segment. So let's take a look at how the season might play out from a conference standpoint. And welcome back, Barrett Sallee and Chip Patterson. And gentlemen, it's not quite going to be a Power 5 for long. We know that. College football is trending towards a Super 2, if you will. But the Southeastern Conference is always at the forefront of any conversation. And yes, Alabama are favored again to be second to none. This time the Tide or another school, might they ultimately claim the SEC? Chip, what say you?
That the Crimson Tide are a fantastic bet when you get them in this position where they've got that extra bit of motivation. I mean, think about the 2019 season after watching LSU go and claim the national championship, and the way the response was so impressive in 2020 with Mac Jones, Devontae Smith, Najee Harris coming out and just rolling through the rest of college football. And I think that after seeing Georgia win that game in the national championship, the way that it unfolded, that we are going to have a uniquely motivated Crimson Tide team once again. And so, Bryce Young is back. We are expecting the running back room to now be a plus value point where it was a little bit of a weakness now that we've got Jahmyr Gibbs. Jermaine Burton, oh, by the way, maybe one of the best wide receivers that rival Georgia had. Now he lines up with the Crimson Tide as well. And the defense, not just with Will Anderson, but with Dallas Turner. I mean, they're just going to be able to get after pretty much everybody on their schedule. I think that Alabama and Georgia will show up to the SEC championship game 12-0. But when I do the head-to-head, when I do the tail of the tape, there are just a few less dudes on that Georgia team, though they are loaded defensively, and there is still so much back for the Crimson Tide, so I give the edge to Alabama. I know you got to lay a little bit, but I think it's the smart play in the SEC.
Yeah, Chip, we always talk about where's the value, and immediately when we're asked where the value is, my eyes go from second all the way down to whatever the last team is in whatever conference we're talking about. The real value in the SEC is the first team. We don't need to get crazy. There's no reason to outthink the room. Chip, like you said, Alabama has the two best players in the country, Bryce Young and Will Anderson. Oh, by the way, those are also the two most important positions in the country. They have motivation. We've seen what happens when Nick Saban has that. And I think defensively, you're looking at a team at linebacker. I think they've improved. At secondary, a seasoned Kool-Aid McKinstry, a veteran Jordan Battle. They've got guys everywhere. And like you mentioned, Chip, they hit the transfer portal in key spots. Tyler Steen from Vandy, the offensive lineman coming over, he could be the guy that solidifies what was a really bad offensive line last year. If that happens, or even if the offensive line is just adequate, Alabama should roll to the SEC championship.
Well, similar domination in the Big Ten. For so long, it's been Ohio State, then everyone else. And as the Wisconsin Badger in me, it has pains me to say that. OSU is favored to win the conference this season. Barrett, any chance someone else takes home the crown as Big Ten champion?
I mean, I'd love to sit here and make a case for Wisconsin, but the answer is
That's what
no.
I like to hear.
It
Oh,
really
come on.
Is no. Yeah, okay, Wisconsin gets to the Big Ten championship game. Okay, maybe 60 good minutes. But no, I mean, Ohio State, all the money has to go with Ohio State. Again, we try to make arguments for teams that aren't the favorite when we're talking about value, but you're talking about an Ohio State team, the best or second best quarterback in the country, the best wide receiver in the country, a top 3 running back in the country, and the best defensive coordinator now in the country with talent to work with. So I know the offense or the defensive line at Ohio State was, less than what it needs to be last year. I get that. This is the most talented defense Jim Knowles has ever had to work with. And so while he did great things at Oklahoma State, I expect that defense to be elite in short order in Columbus. So all the pieces are there. It would take, I think, a massive, massive upset, not only in the Big Ten East, but you have to imagine that whoever upset Ohio State might hit some landmines as well. So, whether it's the Big Ten championship game or during the regular season, I just don't see Ohio State slipping up. So to me, it's all Buckeyes.
Yeah, you mentioned like at Penn State, that does seem tricky, at Michigan State, but I don't trust either of those teams to also run the table, to your point, Barrett. The only other option here might be to go with Michigan, but who in their right mind thinks that Ohio State and Ryan Day are going to let that happen? To lose to Michigan twice in a row after that long winning streak in Columbus? Nah. That ain't going to happen. Ohio State is going to right the ship. They're going to win the Big Ten. I do think it's possible that we go into that Ohio State-Michigan game with both teams 11-0 and very much fighting for a college football playoff spot. And there have even been some to project that Ohio State and Michigan could both make it to the college football playoff. But only one team can make it to the Big Ten championship game from the Big Ten East. And there is no way that I'm going to pick Michigan to beat Ohio State in Columbus for a second win in the row. Barrett's 100% right about the way that this team is built, the improvement that we're expecting on the defensive side of the ball. My big name here is Jack Sawyer. We have not seen that really iconic Nick and Joey Bosa, Chase Young, that defensive lineman, that edge rusher who just sort of becomes a superstar. And I think that Sawyer might be the guy. If that happens, then now all of a sudden that Ohio State defense has a little bit more teeth once again. You got to lay a lot, but don't burn your money chasing losers when there's a winner right in front of your face.
It was an uneven season, though, for DJU under center for Clemson last season. Despite the strong finish from the team, a rather unorthodox campaign for Dabo's Tigers as we look at options to claim the ACC. Might there be a team ready to take the mantle from Clemson this year? Barrett, who do you have claiming the conference?
Not to get all chalky, but I have Clemson. You mentioned DJU Uiagalelei was a liability last year, and that's the truth. But this is a different situation with Cade Klubnik coming in behind him. The pressure's all on DJU, and he knows it, and Dabo knows it. And I'm talking about Cade Klubnik coming in, potentially being what Trevor Lawrence was as a true freshman, coming in after 4 games and taking the job and running with it if DJU can't handle it. Aside from that liability, that issue, they have the best defensive line in the country. They've got a great running back in Shipley. The offensive line should be improved. So it is chalky. I get it. But Clemson right now is set up for success. They had some issues early last year. That November stretch when they went on a run, that's who they really are. And they can ride that into the offseason. So I'll take Clemson. I'm not buying NC State to be consistent. I'm not buying Florida State to be consistent. Wake Forest, I'm still not going to buy in yet. So I'll take Clemson. Higher talent and better quarterback situation.
And even within the context of the way the schedule breaks, there's so many advantages that Clemson has in terms of being able to recapture that ACC championship after winning it for 6 years in a row and having that broken. Because the toughest games on the schedule, whether it's NC State at home, Miami at home, the Notre Dame game doesn't count for what we're talking about here with an ACC championship. And so I just think it sets up well for Clemson to be able to win the key games that they need to win, make it to the ACC championship, where they will likely win the ACC championship once again. And I look at what happened at the second half of that season, because basically Clemson reverted into being like a 2010, 2011 era SEC team where their defense was absolutely loaded and they just ran the ball a whole lot. They didn't put a lot on their passing game, and that's kind of what they could do. They cannot win a national championship that way. They need either DJ Uiagalelei or Cade Klubnik to really bring that kind of Watson-Lawrence-like spark into the passing game if they want to win a national championship. But to win the SEC, they can just play elite defense and run the ball well, and that can be good enough, especially with the schedule that breaks that way. This is actually value for Clemson, in my opinion. You have to lay a little bit, but compared to what you've had to do in recent years, this is the time to buy low on the Clemson Tigers.
Oklahoma State finished at the top of the Big 12 standings a year ago. You got to cover your ears, OSU fans. The favorite to win the conference this year is Oklahoma. New head coach and starting QB for the Sooners. Chip, who are you willing to wager on would be on the top of the Big 12?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma, and it is, yes, with the new head coach, Brent Venables. It is with the new quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. but it's also with that offensive coordinator hire of Jeff Lebby, who I think was a very inspired hire to be able to utilize the roster that Lincoln Riley left in place, where we do have some players like Marvin Mims, an elite wide receiver, and other skill players who are part of that, up-tempo, throw it around, not necessarily specifically air raid, but certainly a modern offense. Jeff Lebby was at Ole Miss and had a lot of success with Lane Kiffin. And where was he before that? Oh, yeah, UCF with Dylan Gabriel. We've got a lot of examples across the country of a transfer quarterback linking up with an old coach, whether it's a coordinator or a head coach. And in a lot of those cases, I am going to believe that they are going to be able to get the best out of him. Dylan Gabriel was incredibly successful when Jeff Lebby was his offensive coordinator, and I think that that is going to happen once again. I think it's very advantageous that you get Baylor and Oklahoma State at home. Of course, we always know Texas is a neutral. I do not think Oklahoma is going to be an undefeated team. I do not think Oklahoma is going to be a one-loss team, but that is also because I believe the Big 12 is going to be one of those cannibalized years where everyone beats up on each other and the champion might even have 2 conference losses.
Baylor is the Wolf of Wall Street bet this year in college football. All you guys can just send me money via Cash App. I will invest it at Baylor plus 650 and make you a ton of money in short order. Did we forget the part of the season, off season, when Dave Aranda forgot how to coach? Did we forget the part where Baylor lost all their defensive linemen? No, the defense is loaded. The offense, I think last year, gained some confidence down the stretch. Playmakers emerged, and then they named Blake Shapen the quarterback. We saw how good he was in the bowl game. This Baylor team is primed for another Big 12 championship. I look at that schedule, and I see Oklahoma State at home. That is huge. Yeah, you got to go on the road to play Oklahoma, but it's after a Texas Tech game. I don't think that's very daunting either. I think for right now, if you look at Baylor, if they can get by BYU, you're probably talking about a one-loss Big 12 champion. And if that happens, Baylor's going to get into the college football playoff. So to me, it's all about Baylor. It's disrespectful to Dave Aranda that they've put this team 4th in the Big 12 in odds. Plus 650 is easy money. It's the Wolf of Wall Street bet.
How about that? How about Barrett right there? Forget chalk. Forget chalk.
Venmo, I'll get you, Barrett. I got you.
There you go. All right, gentlemen, soon enough, the Pac-12 will look very different. But this year, USC and UCLA still a part of it. We mentioned the Trojans, co-favorites with Utah to win the conference. Might either of you have them claiming the conference? Chip, I start with you.
Utah. This is plus 2-1 for the Utah Utes, a team that showed in 2 wins against Oregon last year that it was just more physical and more explosive and just better than everybody else in the league. And now we've got the other contenders, USC and Oregon, are breaking in new head coaches, breaking in new staffs, and even have transfer quarterbacks while Utah brings back Cam Rising. I think that this is really, really good value on Utah to be able to go and win the Pac-12 again. It is exciting to think about what Lincoln Riley can do at USC. By the way, that game is going to be in Salt Lake City when they do meet in the regular season. It is exciting to think about what Dan Lanning is going to be able to do against Oregon. But again, as I mentioned last year, there was a physicality difference that was just very dramatic and impactful in my analysis of both Utah and Oregon. And so at 2-1, I think that this is a great pick where Utah is the class of the conference, a college football playoff contender, and the team that I would invest my money in to win the Pac-12.
Yeah, I agree. You get them at plus 210. Honestly, I consider taking them at minus 210. I'm that confident in Utah. I think, like what you mentioned, Utah from a physicality standpoint, unlike anything you see in the Pac-12. And you look, okay, let's just say they get USC twice. There's not a divisional alignment this year, so they could get USC in the regular season and in the Pac-12 championship game. USC can't block anybody. You mean to tell me suddenly they're going to learn how to block against the fastest, most physical defensive front in the Pac-12? No. That is not going to happen. So Utah, with the combination of that physicality on defense and an offense with Cam Rising, Tavion Thomas, and like 7 different tight ends that can kill you in a bunch of different ways, continuity in the coaching staff, everything lines up for Utah to not only make a run to the Pac-12 championship again, but potentially make a run to the college football playoff. So plus 210, tied with USC. That's just insane. Again, I take him at minus 210. I'm very confident in Kyle Whittingham.
All right, they were almost in lockstep all the way through. Our thanks to Chip Patterson and Barrett Sallee with a look at the Power 5 futures. Let's take a look at how they see it. They like the conference favorites almost across the board. SEC, it's Alabama. It's Big Ten, Ohio State. ACC, Clemson at a minus 140. In the Pac-12, it's Utah. They're split, though, on the Big 12 with Chip going the favorite with the Sooners, while Barrett likes some value there with Baylor at a plus 650 to claim the conference. And for more Chip Patterson, make sure you check out the Cover 3 podcast. Chip is joined by Danny Cannell, Tom Fordelli, and Bud Elliott, breaking down the top storylines in the college football world. The crew will also give their best bets ahead of each week's games. Cover 3 podcast. Download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.